That particular technical presentation will have our colleague from the AMCOW Secretariat, Ms. Comfort Kanshio, who is the WASH Policy Officer at the AMCOW Secretariat. Then we are going to have a very interesting panel discussion where we'll have colleagues share experiences, especially related to issues of sanitation and the policy environment in Africa. And we'll also be looking at the barriers, the opportunities, and the lessons learned. And for that, we have quite a very good mix of officials from Nigeria, Tanzania, Ghana, and South Africa who are going to reflect and relate with this particular topic. Then that will be followed up with an interactive session of mostly our development partners. This will be more or less like a deep dive discussion into the main issues of this particular session. And for that one, we're going to have colleagues from UNICEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have also colleagues from WaterAid, and also our partners from the APHRC. I'll leave them to at least give us details about that particular acronym. I know in the water sector we are not short of acronyms. And of course, we would also want to have a bit more interaction with the partners the participants in the room here, but also those that are online. We'll find a way how to make sure that we have them all. My name is Nelson Gomonda. I am working as a Director of Programs at the Secretariat in AMCOW. I'll be the moderator then for this particular program. Later on, then we'll have again the AMCOW Technical Advisory Committee Chair to close it for us. But for this moment, let me invite Dr. Tahani Salit, the AMCOW TAC Chair, to give us a welcome address. And please, let's give and put our hands together.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson, for this great introduction. Your Excellency, Mr. David Molopo, Deputy Minister, Department of Water and Sanitation in South Africa, Member States of the African Union here present, our partners and stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I'm honored to welcome you to this important session on the state of sanitation and hygiene policy environment in Africa. This session brings to focus the significance of comprehensive sanitation and hygiene policy in developing meaningful implementation strategies and plans. First, allow me to appreciate AMCOW and partners who have worked to convene this timely session. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, inclusive policies, institutional arrangements, regulations, and financing constitute the policy instrumented in the delivery of sustainable sanitation services. Unfortunately, existing weaknesses in these areas are slowing the pace towards achieving SDG 6. In response, the African Ministers' Council on Water developed the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines, or in short, ASPG. The ASPG outlines essential elements necessary to revise, develop, or strengthen the sanitation and hygiene policy environment. These guidelines present an opportunity for both Africa and the global community to address fundamental issues and expedite access to safe sanitation services. As a first step in the ASPG utilization, AMCOW, in collaboration with UNICEF, is conducting a situation assessment of the sanitation and hygiene policy environment in selected African countries. The aim is to identify weaknesses, to strengthen using the ASPGs and opportunities that can be harnessed to achieve that target of the Ngor commitments and SDGs. The situation assessment will aid in establishing a baseline which will serve as a reference point for monitoring the impacts of the ASPG utilization at country level. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that comprehensive policies will pave the way to develop implementable strategies. Additionally, it will inform the right partnerships to deliver safely managed sanitation and hygiene. This is crucial in providing access to water, sanitation, and hygiene services in order to serve over 800 million people in Africa lacking access to safely managed sanitation, and nearly 430 million of Africa's population without access to potable water, and 18% are still practicing open defecation, as stated in the 2022 Water Supply and Sanitation Sector Monitoring Report. By building the right partnership and engaging the private sector, we can effectively utilize the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines to strengthen aspects of the policy environment, as will be recommended in the assessment report, and support in addressing the gaps identified in the third edition of the Africa San and Ngor report, as will presented. I encourage us to remain steadfast in our quest to reach the Ngor and SDG 6 target. To conclude, allow me to wish you all fruitful deliberation as we identify sustainable ways on aligning our sanitation hygiene policy environment with global and continental targets and realize water and sanitation for all, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tahani Saliti, AMCOW TAC Chair, for those welcome remarks. I know we seem to be shy from appreciating good things, so let's give her again a very good appreciation. If I hear you whistling, it won't be an offense to this session, so feel free to ululate, whistle when you are happy. I think that's what we are known for sometimes. This time around, we expected to have the opening address from the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, or rather Deputy Minister for Water and Sanitation in South Africa. We will give her an opportunity to do this at some point because she's just caught up, I think, in the traffic. So
I think it's an evacuation alarm. We might have to leave the room.
Viktigt meddelande. Viktigt meddelande. Brand har utbrutit.
Yes, we need to leave the venue.
So is it meant to be?
It's a fire alarm. We need to leave the venue.
Okay, so we have to come out and then we'll come back.
Attention, please. Attention.
for all of us. We just have to continue with the program. For the sake of those that are online, please accept our apologies. We didn't even say bye to you guys because we were meant to leave the room and we forgot that you were online. So bear with us on that one. So we are going to continue with the program, and we left at the moment where we were just about to invite the Honorable Deputy Minister from South Africa to open this meeting. So at this point in time, let's put our hands together as we welcome the Minister to officially open this session. Over to you, Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. All right. Just make sure that it's closer to me because both me and you are very tall. All right. That's good. Thank you so much. Is it good morning? Good morning. In my language, we say Ndimacheroni, Absheni, Sanbonani. Now I forgot my Swahili. What is morning in Swahili? Hey, no, that's tough. All right, Shona, yeah, in Shona? No one knows Shona? Online? All right, I'm disappointed. Okay, moderator, AMCOW President Professor Dr. Hani Sewilams, AMCOW Vice Presidents present, AMCOW Executive Secretary, and your team, ladies and gentlemen. Moderator, allow me to convey greetings from South Africa to this auspicious occasion and acknowledge with thanks the invitation for South Africa to participate in this event. I would also like to reiterate the significance of AMCOW and the guidance offered by water ministers in guaranteeing a united strategy for addressing issues that have potential to elevate Africa to new heights. This approach will also expedite the realization of the SDGs concerning sanitation and hygiene by 2030, paying special attention to the needs of women, girls, and those in vulnerable situations. The right to have access to water and basic sanitation is enshrined in the South African Democratic Constitution. In line with our Constitution, South Africa has developed the National Sanitation Policy that endorses the National Sanitation Targets as outlined in our National Development Plan. And I would want to say, moderator, it is important for me to mention that South Africa's National Development Plan, what we call NDP, its targets are fully aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and Africa's Agenda 2063. The three guiding frameworks at global, continental, and country level are all seeking to achieve affordable and reliable access to sufficient water sanitation by 2030 for all. And this is what we say, we leave no one behind. And our President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa has ensured that even in his State of Nation address, when he opened this year, and he said that we need to adopt the theme to say we leave no one behind. So in what we do, we ensure that we don't leave anybody behind, and the people are at the heart of the work that we do. Now, South Africa is also currently on track to implement the National Sanitation Framework, the NSF, which is providing revised reforms and standards which result in greater equity in the provision of sanitation services policy. And the policy also strengthens the monitoring of compliance to the norms and standards, corrective action on non-compliance, improved coordination and planning between responsible sector department. And in order for that policy issues are covered, the revised water and sanitation services norms and standards in terms of the Water Services Act will also include revised minimum standards for acceptable sanitation. The new norms and standards will also be based on technical consideration, population density, groundwater pollution, risk and economies of scale. Sanitation backlogs will also need to be recalculated against the revised norms and standards. Moderator, we embark on a shared journey, a united endeavor that signifies a crucial juncture in our path towards enhancing the quality of life for every individual across the African continent through the advancement of policies related to sanitation and hygiene. In my capacity as the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation in the Republic of South Africa, I address you with a deep sense of purpose, the excitement, the discussions that will also unfold during the proceedings hold the potential to shape the direction of our nation policy in pursuit in achieving the SDG 6 by 2030. The 2023 annual gathering of the World Water Week happens when Africa is at its highest in rolling out the African Investment Program, which is led by the International High Panel on Water Investment, comprised of sitting heads of state, UN entities, and African Union entities, endorsed and adopted by the African Union and AMCOW. As a ministerial council that engages on all initiatives that will take Africa's water sector forward, reaffirming our mantra that talks to say sanitation is dignity. The heart of good policy formulation resides in the profoundness and precision of a grasp upon the extent of challenges and prospects to resolve them. It is in this spirit that we also convene to dig into the findings of an all-encompassing study that delves into the realms of the sanitation and hygiene policy ecosystems across Africa, the state of sanitation and hygiene report in Africa, which will be presented later, obviously, in this session, as you would know. And in my pinpointing the gasps and obstacles of that state of sanitation and hygiene, within this conducive policy environment, we are primed to unearth prospects of policy improvement. And I feel that this is something that we need to be strengthening. And this will also require the harnessing partnership, technology, and data to overcome hurdles and establish conditions conducive to impact policy changes. But nevertheless, I want to say the resources at our disposal limits the scope of scaling of the implementation of our policies as informed by the SDG 6 and relates its own targets. In conclusion, I want to implore each and all of us to approach these deliberations with a spirit of cooperation, inquisitiveness, and determination. Our shared vision extends beyond the boundaries of this event, encompassing a brighter future for our nation. Our communities should also implement the policies that we set for ourselves in this instance, because it's good and well to do policies and we review, but we need to also accelerate implementation. The time has arrived that we need to implement what we say, and we keep on checking, checks and balance to ensure that which that we would have committed, indeed it does find fruition and it does come to its own harnessness. Let us also grasp in this juncture to instigate transformation and to foster alliances that transcends beyond borders and map a trajectory towards a future where sanitation and hygiene are universally attainable, regardless of socio-economic standing of a geographic location. Moderator, I wish you all a successful session that will also provide a true picture of the state of sanitation and hygiene in Africa as a whole. And I want to say Happy Africa Day. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Well, thank you so much, Her Excellency Honorable Minister Judith Chabarara, for the welcome and also the opening of this session. I loved the appreciation that we got, but let's give her another appreciation, please. I was actually expecting to hear that again, so thank you so much. So I'm told by the organizers of the World Water Week that the program has now been pushed forward or rather backward, but I don't know. We have an extra 30 minutes to make up for the time that we have lost. So there is no stress for us in terms of making sure that we finish at the time that was previously indicated for this session. At this point in time, we will have some kind of a framing presentation This one will be made by our colleague who is online from the AMCOW Secretariat. She is Madam Comfort Kanshio. If you can help us on the IT side to listen to her presentation. Madam Kanshio, over to you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Are we able to view the screen and the presentation? Okay,
I'm
thank you.
trying to share from my end. Is that fine? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Thank you so much. You can take it from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. I do hope you can hear me loud and clear. My name is Comfort Kanshio. I work for the African Ministers Council on Water, and I'm the policy officer for water, sanitation, and hygiene. As already mentioned, excuse me, the presentation is around the state of sanitation and hygiene policy environment, and we are focusing on the situation in selected countries in Africa. So as an outline, we will talk about very briefly who we are as at the African Ministers Council on Water, our pursuits as it concerns continental monitoring and reporting, and then we'll delve into the situation assessment of sanitation and hygiene policy environment. Who are the member states involved? What were the methodologies used? What are the preliminary findings looking like? And how does these findings speak, or how consistent are those findings with the Africa San Ngor commitment? And then we look at next steps. So the African Ministers Council on Water were formed in 2002, and the Secretariat is here in Abuja, Nigeria. Our organs and structures serve as a working group on water and sanitation of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Water and Environment. The African Ministers Council on Water, as a mission, we provide political leadership, policy direction, and advocacy in the provision and use management of water resources for sustainable and social economic development. As a vision, we aspire to see an Africa where there is equitable and sustainable use and management of water resources for poverty alleviation, socio-economic development, regional cooperation, and environment. We work across African countries, and our focus ministries are ministries in charge of water and maybe sanitation, as the case may be, depending on the structure of the country. Now, AMCOW received the mandate to monitor globally on water and sanitation issues and report to the heads of state. And we do this in two different approaches. First, we look at using the water sector and sanitation monitoring and reporting, which is popularly called, or the acronym, WASMO. And then we have another arm of monitoring, which is the Africa San Ngor Declaration on Sanitation and Hygiene. The Africa San Ngor Declaration was endorsed in 2015 by the heads of states and critical stakeholders in the sector. And the vision of the Ngor is to achieve universal access to adequate, equitable, inclusive, and sustainable sanitation and hygiene services, but also eliminating open defecation by 2030. And we can see that this is almost like it's 100% aligned as well with what we aspire to achieve using the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, to be able to ensure progress in achieving the vision of the Ngor, the ministers endorsed 10 commitments, and to my, I'm not sure what that is for you, but to my left, you would see the circle with the commitments, talking about engagement in Africa Stand process, eliminating inequality, strengthening private sector engagement, and also mobilizing financing. These are some of the commitments that the Africa San Ngor monitors. Now, to do this, we have about 49 indicators, and these indicators are categorized in 3 stages. So we have the vision indicators, which mostly extracts data from the aligns with the SDGs and the WASMO, but then we also have the commitment indicators, and these are broken down into 2 stages. We have the stage 1, which is the enabling environment, and the stage 2, which monitors the country targets. The enabling environment mostly monitors progress on fundamental structures, and then the country indicators talk about the country targets. So fundamental structures, things like policies, strategies across board, but then country targets such as what are the objectives of those countries in terms of how they intend to achieve the sanitation and hygiene services. Now, over the years, monitoring sanitation and hygiene across Africa, our reports have consistently shown that it is not enough to have containment. It is not enough just to have a sanitation facility. For us to be able to say we are providing safely managed sanitation, all aspects of the sanitation service chain must be considered. And this service chain we can see was mainly lifted from the State of the World Sanitation that was developed by UNICEF and WHO, really just to show an indication of what we mean. So we have heard the Deputy Minister have talked about policies. Yes, policies are great, but we need to talk about implementation. We need to talk about standards, norms, and all these are captured on this service chain. So we have seen over the years that regulatory frameworks have to be in place apart from having a sanitation facility. We need to have institutional arrangements. We need to have the policies themselves, strategies and plans indicating our strategies and what is it we want to achieve. We need to build capacity. We need to build skills of people who will deliver at different aspects of the service chain. We need appropriate technology. We need funding. We need to document data, because that's when we can then inform decision as we move towards achieving the Ngor and also the SDGs. Partnerships are critical, and we also need more than ever to engage the private sector if we must achieve safely managed sanitation. So these were the elements that we got from our reporting and also the initial assessment that we've conducted. Now, in response to the gaps that we need to do more than having toilets, the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines were developed by AMCOW. And this document was launched in 2021. And you can see at part 3 highlighted highlights some of the core elements that we thought should be included in sanitation policies, strategies, and plans. We have the institutional arrangement, regulation, those elements that were mentioned. And apart from having those policies, the guidelines, which is the ASPG, also makes provision for implementation strategy to be able to guide member states to implement what is it they have captured in their policy. So these are the core elements, and we recommend African Union member states and even beyond to adapt this and strengthen the policy enabling environment. Now, following the launch of the ASPG, we swung quickly into action. We created a web-based demand form for countries to send in requests for support to be able to utilize the ASPG. And we also had MOUs and engagements with our partners to be able to provide support to complement the demand that we are using, to respond to the demand that we are receiving from our member states. And here to my right, you can see the countries. We have WaterAid, APHRC, UNICEF, Speak Up Africa, ESAWAS. Now, these partners mentioned are actively supporting member states to utilize the ASPG to reform their policy situation. And if I can mention, I think the process had really gone very far, and if not to completion in, for example, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone. We have ongoing intervention in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Malawi, and Niger. And these are all carried out or all being supported by the partners that we've mentioned. Now, to be able to track progress and facilitate the utilization of the ASPG, AMCOW, in collaboration with UNICEF, is engaging in a study. Now, the aim of the study really is to assess the sanitation landscape. We need to understand, yes, we need policies, we need to implement, but we need to understand what is the landscape looking like? What is the policy environment looking like? What gaps are there? And how will countries be supported to strengthen weaknesses in the policy environment? And the reason why we thought this is very important is because if we do not monitor, we wouldn't know how to strengthen the policy environment. We wouldn't know what gaps are there. We wouldn't know how to inform appropriate decisions. So we thought to establish a baseline of the policy environment at first, and the findings from that assessment would inform the reference point, will serve as a reference point upon which AMCOW will regularly monitor the impact of the ASPG. Now, the ASPG had objectives. We need to see if we are achieving those objectives, and to do that, we need to monitor. And to monitor, we needed a reference point, and this was what informed this study that we are talking about today. Now, these are the countries that the study is being conducted in, and these are the selection criteria. We had about 4 selection criteria that led to this country. These are first cohort of countries to undertake this study. Some of them have actually undertaken the study independently, but we intend to have a synthesized report that can inform our monitoring process. And that's why we still included some of them in this list of 20 countries. Now, the methodology, 3 basic methodologies was used for this study. The first, as you've seen previously, we identified and selected countries, and we conducted desk review. Now, the desk review was based on the existing policy environment, policy documents in the country. These documents were collated through our sanitation focal points across these countries, and for some, depending on the documents we have, we resort to online to get some of those information, and then we conducted the assessment. Also, we had interviews with focal points who are mainly directors of ministries in charge of sanitation. These processes are still ongoing in some countries, but we have conducted interviews in over I think 15 countries thereabout. Now, what elements did we assess during these interviews, but also during the assessment? First of all, we needed to be sure, are there policies, strategies, or plans? Are there documents that govern sanitation work in country? And then secondly, what are the vision of those policies? Like, what are the objectives and principles? What are the sanitation systems? What technologies are there? What are the plans that countries are making to move from open defecation through the rungs of the ladder all the way to safely managed sanitation? What is the thinking around hygiene and behavior change? What about the institutional arrangement, regulation, capacity, monitoring, and evaluation? So these were the elements that we assessed during the study. Now, preliminary findings, like a summary of preliminary findings coming in, shows that yes, countries do have policies. So far, there is no one country that doesn't have a document that governs their sanitation work. But what we have seen is that, first of all, some of those policies do not mention safely managed sanitation. Now, we do not know the reason, probably because some of them were developed way before the Sustainable Development Goals. So they are not 100% aligned with the journey to safely managed sanitation. So safely managed sanitation and resource recovery tends to be silent in some of the policies that we've looked at. Some of the policies do not have vision statements. Climate change that is aligned with sanitation. So climate issues are not captured in most of the sanitation policies. Accountability mechanisms for sanitation financing are also what some of the things that are silent in existing policies. How does sanitation, we all know that sanitation is cross-cutting, but if we look at those policies, they are sort of silent about other ministries' policies in water policies, environment, health. It's either sanitation policies are integrated into all those policies and so does not necessarily, it's not comprehensive enough to address the different stages across the sanitation chain, or it's sort of relegated. So those are some of the concerns that we've seen in those policies. Operation and maintenance are mainly looked as an afterthought. So yes, countries can say, even in terms of interacting with during interviews, yes, we have sanitation facilities in place, but maintaining those facilities are not catered for, no plans, and also sustainable plans for sanitation service delivery. There are no plans of how we know that with the population growth, the pace of sanitation system is not consistent with the pace at which with population growth and private sector engagement. The policies don't seem to clearly articulate how the countries intend to be intentional in attracting the private sector. Now, these are delving into the elements assessed one after the other. We're not going to talk too much on those, but just to mention that reference to appropriate technology for safely managed sanitation and sanitation in emergencies, we've talked about climate, are mainly sort of not considered in most of the policies looked at, and also protection for sanitation workers are some of the things that are coming up. In terms of hygiene and behavior change, menstrual hygiene management is key. That should be reflected, but seem to be missed in quite a number of the policy aspects on inclusion, equity, and also operation and maintenance of those of systems are missing. Institutional arrangement, yes, institutional arrangement are mentioned in quite a number of the policies, but clarity in terms of roles and accountability in mechanism in place to be able to track who does what and how is the implementation of those aspects going are things that needs to be strengthened in the aspects of institutional arrangement. Regulation is critical. Regulations seem to be missing in most of the policies looked at, particularly regulation of non-sewer sanitation systems. We've heard the Deputy Minister talked about norms and standard. We need regulation. When we talk about treating of waste before disposal, we need standards. We need stipulated standard before the effluent can be disposed. But all of those technical aspect, economic aspect of regulation are missing. Quite a number of policies talked about penalties, but no reward for good behavior, no reward. If you're behaving well, there seem not to be incentives to sustain good behavior. Now, capacity development. Capacity development seem to be focused on skills and silent on research and on linkage with academia, and also sustainability plan for capacity development. Those aspects seem to be missing in the policies looked at. Funding was another issue. The main thing for us here that we wanted to talk about is, yes, I mean, also in our engagement with countries, we've heard countries say, yes, obviously we can see that we are making progress. We can see that sanitation situation is improving, but to be honest, we cannot track it because we don't have a unified system to track the funding that comes from ministry in charge of sanitation, that comes from education, that comes from environment. There are no centralized systems to make a case for those. As such, it is difficult for countries to even say if they have made progress in terms of incremental aspects of achieving funding, of tracking funding all the way to the 0.5 GDP that we intend to see. Now, monitoring and evaluation. One thing we want to talk about, yes, some countries do not have monitoring and evaluation at all in their policies. But the ones that do have, and also in terms of the interaction with them, it is not very sustainable. Some of them review progress during joint sector reviews, but it is not sustainable across, but some countries are some policies are silent on this. And one thing we also saw was that, yes, for countries who do monitor, the data is not being used. So it's like monitoring and keeping the data on the shelf. The data is not informing decisions, it's not being used. So these are some of the aspects that we hope countries, we recommend for countries to strengthen. Now, how does all of this that we've talked about, all these elements align with the Ngor report? Now, currently we've prepared, or we are finalizing in terms of printing and all of that, the Ngor report for 2023, of which 40 member countries reported, and these member countries cut across the 5 regions of Africa. I'm not sure if you can see that clearly, but the countries in blue are the ones who have submitted data for the Ngor monitoring. I'm not going to talk about this, but just to talk about very briefly how the report is looking like. So this is, like I mentioned earlier, we have 49 indicators of the Ngor. Now, indicator C4A, that's the question. Is there a government body with clear mandate to lead and coordinate sanitation activities? So we've used a basic traffic light to represent the result, and you can see this is a very good indicator in terms of progress. Countries have mixed good. We can see that the progress has increased and is really looking well, with no countries scoring below from 40 below, and quite a number of countries, I think over 30 countries or so, reported on this indicator, and there is clearly a lead government body with clear mandate to coordinate sanitation activities. This is some of the reports that we are having of from the Ngor. Now, looking at indicator C7A, is there a mechanism in place to track, monitor the amount of untreated fecal waste being disposed into the environment? Here we can see we have, I think, about quite some of the countries that responded here to this information, I think 13 countries or so, and we can see that only 8 of this country are within the range of 70 to 100. Quite a number of countries reported, but we can see red and also the amber and quite a number of information were not accessed under untreated waste. I think these sort of align with the policy that we've talked about. And then we have the Ngor, the budgets. Are we able to track 0.5 of the GDP? Here, only 8 countries responded. The other countries did not submit information on this. Now, looking at the next steps, we'll finalize this report and then make sure that we engage with countries for validation before this report is finalized. The country profiles will also be shared. But most importantly, what we have done is to incorporate all these aspects where countries, where we think there needs to be additional attention. We have incorporated this into our theme for the African San conference that is coming up in November, and we'll discuss extensively on those and come up with solutions that can help us accelerate access to us achieving not only the Ngor Declaration, but also the Sustainable Development Goal 6.2. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Comfort, for that presentation. And as we said, it was meant to be the framing presentation just to give us the position. But that also forms the basis of most of the discussions that are now coming up. This moment, because of the time, we have to move on to some panel discussions. And the idea with the panel discussion is basically to share experiences, if there are some solutions, and what are maybe the barriers that some of the countries are facing or partners are facing. And then we also consider the opportunities. Now, we noted that earlier on, it could be important to have some experiences from countries. So I just want to check if we have anybody in the room from Nigeria or online. You just let us know as well. Tanzania in the room? Okay. So maybe in this case, let me just say, representatives of these member states and institutions in these member states just come up front here. So we'll have Tanzania come front, Nigeria. We have Ghana. Is Ghana in the room? Okay, great. Can we also have Malawi? Dr. Hanja, I think here with us on this one. Initially in the program we had South Africa, but we thought they have already had a very good airtime, especially with the minister giving us an opening address, and she also shared quite a lot. So we felt maybe we can have South Africa in some of the subsequent sessions later in the day. After this moment of these exchange and conversations with these distinguished colleagues and delegates from the member states, we are going to later on have also some reflections with some development partners, as we can see on the program. Now, I have some sort of questions that maybe, if it's okay, I can pose to us, the panelists. I think Dr. Hanyaranja, you can be in the middle, if you don't mind.
Looks too important.
Yeah, so for the discussions, I think we'll try to be quick so that we also are on time. So I would like to invite our panelists, if you don't mind, to be a bit more to the point. We start with maybe Tanzania. We are aware of the ongoing policy reforms in Tanzania. But can you please tell us about the sanitation policy framework, as well as the plans and expectations in aligning it with, of course, the Africa Sanitation Policy Guidelines and what has been highlighted there? So maybe you have some few moments to just reflect on that.
Okay, thank you. First of all, before going to the question, let me introduce myself. I am Engineer William Kazenga Christian from Tanzania. I serve as Director responsible for Sanitation and Hygiene. Honorable Minister and guest, Tanzania, we have a Minister of Water, and the instrument actually formed the Minister of Water has a clear statement that the Minister of Water also has a task to manage and implement the undertakings on sanitation and hygiene. And on doing so, the ministry country is now doing the reform on the policy document. And during the reform of the document, the sanitation, the African Sanitation Policy Guideline was one of the main reference, and the content, most of them have been adopted. I have to mention also that the hygiene portion is partly embedded on the health policy, which actually is under the Ministry of Health. We work together, Ministry of Water, we deal much with structures, but they deal with soft component, with behavioral changes and the similar. And I have to mention so far that we have the Act number 5 of 2019, which spell out the sanitation and the hygiene component and what we are supposed to do. And that act also formed the water and the sanitation utilities in all over Tanzania. And when you go to water utilities in each region, we have a special department dealing with sanitation as well as the water supply. I have to mention also a few that I think this is also similar to other African countries. We started much, we put more resources in water supply first. You know, when you finish water supply, that's where you are going to get the wastewater. Therefore, in terms of water supply, we almost closer to the urban is around 85, the rural area, we almost covering 77%. But the sanitation is still below 20%. The good thing we have now, we have many programs coming in, and also there is several projects running to make sure we cover also this important area. You know, when you miss water, sometimes it's tolerable, but when you miss sanitation service, this is a mess. I submit, and I wait for next question, shall we?
Thank you so much. Let's give the reflections from Tanzania a big applause for that. Thank you for sharing with us those reflections. Dr. Hanja from Malawi, you tell us, and I think you have a bit more experience from especially the utility side of things. You've heard the presentation, you've heard the reflections, but looking at maybe the barriers and the opportunities, what do you see or what can you reflect on, especially when it comes to sanitation in Malawi and especially from the utilities service providers within the cities? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Nelson. I recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister and all dignitaries. For Malawi, I think our story is not very different from other stories that we've heard this morning and from the presentation. Our first issue was to start mainstreaming sanitation as part of our conversation, because it was always like the afterthought. And the evidence in that is the fact that only 6% of the nation, has coverage when it comes to sanitation. So the first thing was to develop a policy that actually makes sense. So we've done that. We have a national sanitation policy, and in it, obviously, we're talking about the issues like, safe hygiene, recycling of solid waste and liquid waste, and so forth. So the policy is robust, it's there, and it's in place. The second thing for us really was to try and find a home for sanitation, because over the years, you'd find it under the Ministry of Health, under agriculture, local government, irrigation. It was everywhere, and it didn't have a home of its own. So I think about 2 years ago, for the first time in the country, we actually had created what we're now calling the Ministry of Water and Sanitation. And it was deliberate, so that there could be deliberate focus on water, but also deliberate focus on sanitation. And that has helped us to start to really think about these things and to be more serious, that where it's beyond just talking about sanitation, but actually seeing things happening on the ground. Now, speaking to what you're talking about, the water utilities, for us now, it's about the evolution of the utilities in the country, because right now, they are water service providers. But now what we want to see is they're moving from water service to water and sanitation service providers. So that is the process right now. So most of our programming projects and what have you are being designed to revamp the sewerage services, enhance solid waste removal and all that kind of stuff, and get it ready so that the utilities can adopt these services. And in adopting that, we can improve the way we're doing service delivery. So one of the utilities, the one in the capital city, Lilongwe, has just finished a program to that effect, and it's now going to be a water and sewage service provider, and as we'll take the lessons from there and it will spread to the other utilities. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. We're in a transitional phase. We are learning, we are getting the policies in place, we are mainstreaming sanitation services. We want that to be the key thing, and we're moving forward. So we're very eager to learn from what others are doing, and that is where we are as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess we can also appreciate Malawi for sharing and those reflections. Moving on to Ghana. Ghana is currently revising or rather revisiting its environmental sanitation policy. And of course, we would be happy to learn from that particular process. But what can you say are the maybe steps that are being taken in this particular case to ensure that the gaps in the existing, let's say, policy environment are addressed, especially in this revision process, and how are the decision makers, including parliamentarians, involved in this particular process? Maybe if you can reflect on those as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Nelson, for the opportunity. I am Engineer Kabina Jesse Dekun, Director for Water Administration Sanitation and Water Resources. Yet, we are now doing a review of our national policy, sanitation policy. The last review was done in 2010. That was during the MDG era. So the goals have changed. There are so many new dynamics coming up on board. At that time, the focus was how to have the population have access to sanitation facilities. Fast forward, the MDG post-era, SDG era coming up on board. We're now looking at what the service levels, moving from just the containment, but also to look how we're able to add value along the chain. Basically, looking at what treatment options. So that's basically what is now driving us for us to have a review of our policy, because we want to bring on board, we want to move along the chain, do more into treatment, recycling, reuse, also the reduction of waste. That is the main policy. So what have we gone through so far? Yeah, for us to start, we wanted to know what were the challenges within the old policy document and what we need to put in place to ensure that we're able to address the SDG goals come the year to 2030. Because our focus is for us to eliminate openification come the year to 2030. Currently, almost like 70.8% of the population is still practicing with openification, which is to us is an eyesore, and it shouldn't be part of our dictionary in this 21st century. So we want to end openification come the year to 2030. We were there in Senegal when we passed the Ngor Declaration, and it is what we understand to ensure that they're able to meet that feat. So what are we doing so far as a country? We first invited the Comfort and his colleagues to come to Ghana to help us to subject our existing policy to the ASPG to know what gaps we're pertaining within our framework. And after almost like 3 days of exercise, we were able to address the gaps that were in the old policy document, which you need to address in the new policy document. So we're able to more or less make the ASPG in a certain way also to help us to achieve the SDG goals come the year 2030. Ghana practices what you call the separation of powers, kind of democracy. You have the judiciary, the legislature, and also the executive. So in doing all this review process, we want to bring everybody on board. Because it's the executive that will try to give us the funding to do work, but it's the legislature, the MPs who now approve our budget. So right from the day one, we are bringing them on board. When we have now a session meeting, a session workshop, we brought the Select Committee of Parliament. They have an oversight responsibility over our ministry for them to understand what we're trying to do. The changes we want to bring on board in the new policy document. And it's, because once we do a new policy document, we are going to do strategic documents to implement the policy. Out of the strategic document, we are going to have programs and activities which will come with cost. So how do we now fund those programs? Those people are going to approve a budget for you to implement those programs must understand where you are coming from to know where you are going. Because if they don't understand the process, if you're asking them to give you $1 million to invest, they will not understand why they should give you $1 million. Thanks so much. We are able to also come up with a document called the Watch Development Program that trying to give us an idea of how much we need to able to implement or to invest to achieve the SDG goals come the year to 2030. And doing all these documents, we try to bring everybody on board, civil societies, academia, parliament, politicians, so that they're able to understand it. Because I don't they want to anchor these documents within the national development planning framework. So if there's even a change of government, that document still stand for it to be implemented. So that's normally what you do in the country. We bring everybody along the way for them to understand where we are going. Because normally, if you don't bring up on board, one, there's a change of government, there's a change in maybe the political space. these documents tend to be shelved. But if they're all part of the process, the development process, they all try to own it at the end of the day. It becomes more or less like they'll have the ownership of that document. So it becomes difficult for us to shelve it at the end of the day. So that's what we are doing as a country. And our aim is for us to able to, as I said earlier on, to limit open unification come the year 2030. We are taking everybody on board able to achieve our goal or achieve our feat come the year 2030. So that is what we are doing so far in Ghana.
Thank you so much, Ghana. I think we can also give an appreciation for Ghana, given the progress that is being made on that. Thank you for those reflections. We also have Nigeria in the room, but online. We have Yemisi. Can you hear us, Yemisi, online?
Hi, Nelson. Good day,
Yes,
everyone.
so definitely we are happy to have you and joining this particular session online. We are aware that Nigeria is in the process of developing its national water, sanitation, and of course hygiene policy. What we would want to hear from you is to what extent are probably, we can say, relevant and all the stakeholders involved in that process. And if for that particular maybe comment, you may want to add what kind of coordination mechanisms are employed to ensure that stakeholders are really being engaged in that particular process. So over to you, Yemisi.
Okay, thank you very much, Nelson. So Nigeria, the federal government of Nigeria established the need to improve the enabling environment for wash development in the country. And that's initiated the process of having a national wash policy. Before now, we had over a 20-year-old policy that was developed in 2000. And over the years, a whole lot of things have changed. We have had the MDGs replaced with the SDG. And then with the ASPG integration, we felt that we need to have a holistic and comprehensive policy that will help us to be able to, that will provide a robust framework for WASH program and implementation in the country. And so we commenced that process, and to make it an all-encompassing process, we engaged different stakeholders ranging from different government agencies, from the Ministry of Water Resources, Environment, Health, Education, youth, sports, women affairs, everyone that has something to do with sanitation across the government circle, we're all involved. And we also have the development partners, all development partners working in the wash sectors were also engaged. We have the civil society that are working in the sector. We also have the academia, because we've also felt that they also play a very important role in research that will help to inform programming. And we didn't leave out the private sector as well, which we've identified as a very critical stakeholder in service delivery in the sector. So all these different categories of stakeholders were involved. And we had a policy development committee set up, which was inaugurated by the Minister of Environment, the former Minister of Environment, and though the process is being led by the Ministry of Water Resources then. And so this is to show you the level of integration and collaboration that we have in the process. And the committee that was set up had been meeting regularly, and we also have platforms, WhatsApp platforms for continuous communication and engagement with the committee. And we have a consultant that has been engaged to help facilitate the process, to bring all the different perspectives together, and to be able to ensure that we have a very robust document that will help us to improve access to wash services in our country and aligning it to the Sustainable Development Goal as well as the Ngor commitment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nigeria, for those reflections. I think we can also give Nigeria very good appreciation for those contributions. In the interest of time, I wanted to have a second round of conversations, but I guess we have them in front of us, our member states, our colleagues who have shared their experiences. Let's work towards engaging them as they are here, and let's give our panelists at this moment in time a very big appreciation and a very good round of applause for them, please, for sharing with us. Thank you so much, Tanzania, Malawi, and Ghana, and also Nigeria. We just have to move on, but somebody was saying, look, it's not a bit sweet because we are not allowing the participants here to ask questions. So we have heard what our colleagues maybe shared in terms of what we're doing at the Secretariat and the work that is going on. We have also heard the member countries in the sense of the progress that they are making. Keep your questions. You'll have it raised at some point, or even your comment, whether you're online and also whether you're here on the room. At this point in time, we just want to move to the next set of the panelists. These are now our development partners, and we want just to, again, dive into the discussions a little bit more. On the panel, we have the BMGF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have also UNICEF. I think UNICEF is online. We have WaterAid in the room here. We have the Africa Population and Health Research Center, I think online as well, and of course other participants that would want to give you an opportunity. Without having to probably ask the two colleagues that are in the house, let me just hand over the mic. So let's start maybe with, with WaterAid. WaterAid is in the house. Where are you, WaterAid? All right, if you don't mind, let me just pass on the mic. So as the mic is coming towards your way, can you tell us about WaterAid's policy support, especially in some of the countries that you are working in, and how you are ensuring relevant stakeholders in those countries are involved in the process? You may want to introduce yourself and then please take us through this reflection. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Nelson. Yes, my name is Maurice. I work with the WaterAid in East Africa as a regional program director. The approach, the overall approach of WaterAid to WASH is on systems strengthening, because we think WASH needs to be looked at in form of systems. Because if you don't look at it that way, you end up being engaged on fragmented support. So the building blocks for a sustainable WASH we look at are mainly institutional arrangement, the financing aspect, the coordination, strategic planning, monitoring, accountability, environment and water resource management, services, of course, people empowerment and leadership. So we have mainly engaged governments strategically on policies and the strategies, because in all countries where I work from, we make sure that countries or governments have policies, but also implementation strategies. And our focus has been mainly on supporting government to make sure that policies are revised in view of two main aspects: inclusion and sustainability. The gender aspect and the other aspect of inclusion, making sure that no one is left behind. In that context, we have seen some good initiatives, like we have seen some countries coming up with climate resilient WASH financing strategies, which is quite new. And we have seen countries engaging on developing a comprehensive national campaigns. And you have also governments who have adopted WASH as a part of NDCs. Interestingly, we did a research and assessment of NDCs, and in all countries, WASH was not reflected. But after a strategic engagement, they have included WASH as part of NDCs.
Recording in progress.
That's what I can share as of now. I think I had more. If I had an opportunity to speak again, I can elaborate a little bit on other aspects. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maurice. Let's give appreciation to WaterAid for that reflection. We were just reminding you that there is a recording going on, so recording is in progress for this particular session as well. Then moving on, let's maybe hear, first of all, from two colleagues who are online. UNICEF, I think we should hear who is from UNICEF. Olga BC. Nice to see you, Olga BC. So the point that we have in our case is to hear from UNICEF. We know governance and policy is a major pillar of UNICEF's sanitation game plan. To reach safely managed sanitation. So what we want to hear from you is what steps are UNICEF or is UNICEF taking to promote this pillar towards actualizing the overall objectives of the game plan? Over to you, UNICEF. You may of course want to introduce yourself and then we move on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nelson, and nice to be with colleagues. My name is BC Agberemi. I work for UNICEF and I lead the urban sanitation component of the program. As you are all aware, UNICEF launched the game plan to reach safely managed sanitation sometime last year. And the whole idea is to support government to achieve safely managed sanitation for their population and meet the SDG target for sanitation. The game plan was built around the SDG acceleration framework and which had governance and policy as one of the main pillars, in fact, the first pillar, with other pillars being data and information, capacity development, finance, and innovation. And for us, so it's very clear that having a robust policy environment will support expected sanitation and transformation that leads to sustainable and equitable safety managed sanitation for all in most countries. It was based on this conviction, of course, that we're partnering with AMCOW, and we supported the process, working with other partners, the process of developing the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines, not just supporting development. Right from the time it was developed, we've been partnering with AMCOW to ensure the rollout of ASPG in several countries, and as part of the means of supporting the game plan. The governance and policy pillar is a major pillar for us in the game plan, and of course, ASPG comes at the time where all of us were looking for something that really galvanized thinking and activate actions around sanitation. So it came at the right time. And as one of the models that was adopted in the game plan for policy and governance was ASPG. So for us, as we are promoting the game plan, we are promoting ASPG as well. So it has become part and parcel of our strategy and plan. So the ASPG was adopted in the UNICEF game plan as an excellent regional initiative that aligns with the overall vision of the game plan in providing transformative policy environment required in most countries for accelerated and sustainable sanitation development. We've heard about the assessment. We've heard from various speakers. In most countries, we don't even have a fully dedicated sanitation policy, which again is a contributing factor to why sanitation always lag behind in terms of accelerating progress. So, for us, UNICEF, we've taken this as a major initiative to support or as part of the ASPG. And ASPG is being promoted by UNICEF, especially in Africa, as part of various efforts of promoting governance and policy pillar of UNICEF game plan. For us to achieve this, internally we've organized several webinars for our staff, and ASPG is now incorporated as part of national sanitation programming as a way of ensuring sustainability, as a way of making sure that each of the countries we support, they imbibe the guidelines to support countries in transforming their national sanitation policies. And with additional funding from Gates Foundation, we have actually have a very deep dive focused intervention in some countries like Sierra Leone, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Cameroon, and Guinea-Bissau, where the sanitation policies, strategies, and guidelines have been updated, reviewed, or developed. And of course, UNICEF is partnering with other partners to support the SDG rollout in other African countries, as I mentioned earlier. And for us, as we support the rolling out of ASPG, some lessons have been learned. In fact, that's, to me, I think it's extremely very important, because I know we're ambitious to come to roll out ASPG, but as we move forward, we learn a lot of lessons, and based on these lessons, we incorporate the lessons to further strengthen the approaches we adopt. Some of the lessons that come very clearly is the fact that policy reforms takes time, and we must all be patient to ensure that the processes for developing the policy are inclusive and government-led to ensure ownership and sustainable sanitation development. There's need for high political will and commitment for us to be able to really ensure that we have policies that belong to the government, not for the partners. So these are something we are learning. Of course, stakeholder engagement and consultation on the policy is extremely very important. And in general, the rural process in party countries have actually catalyzed actions in terms of pushing the agenda of sanitation in most of the country we work. And in general, I think we can say that ASPG initiative has been cooperating in UNICEF sanitation strategy and plan, and we are always happy to partner with AMCOW and other partners again as a way of ensuring that we continue to strengthen the policy environment for sanitation. This is extremely very important. Without having this policy environment, I mean, we've not been making a very sustainable and progress in addressing sanitation challenges. So let me stop here, and I think it's nice to share this brief experience to our colleagues. Thanks so much. Over to you, Nelson.
Thank you so much, BC, for that contribution from UNICEF. And I think in our format and tradition, let's appreciate UNICEF again for this wonderful contribution. Let's move on to the Africa Population and Health Research Center. For you colleagues, I think you are also online, as I understand it. The question that we wanted to check with you is, we know, of course, that the APHRC, the Africa Population and Health Research Center, is facilitating the process of the ASPG in some few countries, I think including Malawi and Mozambique. Can you share with us on the successes and probably lessons from this particular process, if you can be kind to us?
Yeah, thank you very much, and hello to everyone. My name is Alex Manyase. I work for the African Population and Health Research Center, APHRC. Yeah, as already mentioned, we have been at this for a while now, working closely with AMCOW, right from the time when the ASPGs were developed, being part of that process. And also having also initiated the process of supporting Kenya as one of the countries that took the ASPG up through a process that was extremely elaborate, working closely, led by government and with other stakeholders in the sector. And through that process, we've learned quite a bit in terms of what this means and what it takes. And we have taken some of these lessons and worked with other colleagues and organizations in Malawi and Mozambique to share the lessons and also support in the processes that they're going through. For instance, in Malawi, they're going through, I know there's a colleague who already spoke, they're going through a process of reviewing their current policies that support sanitation. And for us, we are facilitating the thinking based on the experiences that we have had going through that process in Kenya. And we're working closely with WestNet in that respect. Many lessons learned, and everywhere we go, we keep sharing these lessons because we know that inclusivity and government leadership comes key in these processes. And one of the things that we have learned is that even before we begin, just understanding the landscape, doing an analysis of where the country is, looking at the current policies, the institutional frameworks, the legal positions in the country, are extremely important in terms of ensuring that the processes are out of the informed position before that process begins. And in ensuring that we have inclusive policies, I know there's Purity in the room with you. If you'll give her a minute or two to speak about the gender part, we have worked very closely with the Africa Renaissance as well to think about what is it that we need to do to create a platform where the gender question can be part and parcel of the policy process making. Behind the scenes, we will keep supporting, we'll keep expanding, we'll keep working with AMCOW to ensure that the countries that we are keen to support take this process forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Africa Population and Health Research Center, for that contribution. An appreciation again to our colleagues at the APRC. Let's give them a big hand for that. In the presentation, I think he's mentioned about mainstreaming issues of gender, and I think we have a colleague who is better placed to help us on that one. Do you want to say something about this already, if you can, probably?
Hello, my name is Purity. I work with African Renaissance. So we work closely with APHRC to mainstream gender in policies. And what we're doing is we're looking at mainstreaming gender across the policy and practice. So we're looking through the policy cycle, and we're starting from what do we look at when we are thinking of reviewing or formulating the policy. So from pre-policy, we're looking at gender analysis and intersectionalities, looking at how do we understand all the gender components and the cross-sectionalities with other sectors. And then at policy formulation, we're looking at even the means to activate the policy interventions that you need to implement, that is resources, but also how do we ensure that gender provisions are incorporated within the policy. And then at execution, we're looking at two levels, where we're looking at systems and structures. How do we mainstream gender to ensure that the institutional arrangements are robust enough to cater for gender and social inclusion aspects, but also looking at the technical standards where majorly we are lacking, because you find regulations, technical standards lack the gender elements, and therefore the implementation of those standards and guidelines lack to reflect that on in practice. And then, of course, monitoring and review of gender aspects, looking at gender disaggregated data, but also looking at are we measuring the impact of sanitation on gender, but also the reverse, gender on sanitation. So we are providing a toolkit that will help to operationalize the gender strategy that AMCOW has come up with. And of course, the process is ongoing, and when the toolkits are ready, they'll be published for consumption. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that contribution, Preeti. We are always appreciating our speakers, so let's give a big appreciation to Preeti for that contribution. And I think this issue that you've mentioned requires quite a lot of partners in this room, if you can, to help and support the issues of mainstreaming, the issues of gender, and definitely developing the necessary tools for that. Moving on, we should be closing any moment in this particular session. We would like to hear also from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We know that the foundation has been a strategic partner in promoting, of course, issues of inclusive sanitation policies across the continent, we can say, and you've been also quite so strong in supporting the African Sanitation Council on Water, especially through the African Sanitation Policy Guidelines, and of course, all that I think we are doing mostly at AMCOW when it comes to sanitation. This foundation has been supporting us quite a lot from that. But what we thought maybe we could hear from you today is what complementary role do you feel like partners can play to ensure that the ASPG, the Africa Sanitation Policy Guideline, is not only adopted or utilized by member states, but also properly, in a way, implemented as well, so that when governments have set up their policies, they're able to implement. But what role can other partners play to really support that particular process? So over to you, Eric. You may want to maybe say a little bit more about yourself, and then you move on.
Many thanks. I hope everybody can see me. My name is Eric Momanyi. I'm a senior program officer at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I work very closely with the AMCOW and the rest of the other partners supporting several countries in work really related to ASPG, policy reform, sanitation policy reform, so to speak. I just want to say before I answer your question that really this is we appreciate the partnership we've had with AMCOW, and if I can just reflect, in a moment for one thing that I think about this whole process. The ASPG process reflects what happens when two things happen: when governments lead, and when partners are willing to work together, bring their heads together, and just without really thinking about themselves and thinking about the bigger picture. And this is really what the ASPG is about. But I think it's also important to remember that the ASPG as a document and as a process, as it has been, is basically a declaration of intention to say that this is the direction we want to be able to go as a continent, and that this direction that we want to go as a continent, this is the ingredients of what we want to be, to make sure that we're ticking off and ensuring that we're including in that journey. But like many things, good intentions are great, and you cannot make progress without good intentions, but good intentions are not enough. And that's why I'm excited this morning to hear, especially from the panelists from government, speaking about the very deliberate steps the governments are taking to really operationalize these policies. And now the question around what exactly are the complementary roles that perhaps government partners or other partners will be able to do. I think it's important that partners get to acknowledge that all the support that is provided to government needs to be really coalesced around a comprehensive national process or strategy, basically, that defines where the government has been able to define goals, what the goals would be like, what the mandates would need to be like, what regulatory mechanisms need to be like, what is utility arrangements needs to look like. A comprehensive government plan or strategy. We need to be able to guide how partners come together with government. There is sometimes I see, it's always convenient and easy if, as development partners, for us to go find a small corner of something and work on it. But I think we need to be able to really understand that it might be counterproductive for us to be able to go doing like that if that is not connected to what really government has defined as a priority. And this is just something I just want to call out as an important ingredient for us to think about. And this is basically calls on governments to really be able to provide that direction and to say exactly how are we thinking comprehensively about all these components. Comfort mentioned very clearly around some of the findings around the really multiple components of functionalities that need to be required to operationalize the policy. Because at the end of the day, having a policy is one thing, but really we're thinking about how do we expand inclusive services to everybody in each of these countries. And so governments being able to provide leadership around a comprehensive plan that we as development partners can be able to tag into will really, really be important. Secondly, I also need to appreciate that there are certain risks associated with the environment in which we operate. And a very good example is climate. And that has come very strongly from the UN conference in March. And I think it's up in discussions in SIWI right here. And the question really becomes, how do we respond as we're thinking about figuring out like these directions? How do we integrate key issues like gender that Purity spoke about here? How do we think about integrating the risks associated with climate so that at the end of the day we are making policies that are comprehensive? Last but not least, I want to say that we live in the era of strong technological progress. We live in the era of artificial intelligence. And basically that is to say that the level at which new innovations and new ways of doing things everywhere around us is happening, it will be a big loss on our part as a sector to be able to say that we can actually operate ignorant of all these changes that are happening around us. And so the question really is, how do we make sure that the progress that is being made, the operationalization of partners coming together, are creating an environment where we can actually identify new ideas, new innovations, that will be able to accelerate the pace at which we achieve the progress we're intending to in this moment. But overall, it's exciting. I think we're living in exciting times. I hear the governments, I get excited, and I'm just hoping that we can be able to scale this, accelerate this work in many ways in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Eric, representing the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. An appreciation to our colleagues at the BMGF, please. A big hand to you. Thank you so much. And thank you for those reflections. And of course, they also serve as the cause on what partners should do, but more importantly, having the governments to take the lead, which is very important. We wanted to hear a little bit of some reflections from the participants, but I'm also mindful of the time. I'm also seeing that we have the US government in the room. I'm not so sure, Jay, would you want to maybe just reflect something, hearing all this that you heard today? If there is something that you'd want to probably also just add the voice on in terms of what role other partners can also play. I think it would be good to hear from you, if it's fine.
Good morning, everybody. I'm James Dumpert with USAID Africa Bureau. And no, I just want, my only reflection to say is that this is very encouraging. It was great as, was just pointed out that we're hearing such great information coming from governments that they are actually taking action. And that's always the biggest criticism is like, we make policies, but there's no action behind it. And it's great to see that there is, work being involved. And so I encourage, just like what Eric said, all of our partners, all of the implementers on the ground to really take a hard look about what is the action that the government is wanting to take and to really get behind that and have that reflected in your work plans, in your strategies, et cetera. So anyway, that's my personal reflection from this, and I congratulate everyone, and particularly the countries, and their hard work and what they've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James, for that contribution as well. I'm quite mindful of the time, and I don't see any hands in the room, which is a good indication that probably this is the right time for us to be closing down the session. At this point in time, let me call upon again the AMCOW Technical Advisory Committee Chair, to give us some maybe last words, and then we can be dismissed. But from ourselves at the AMCOW Secretariat, it's just to invite all of us to really support the agenda that our governments are setting, and making sure that we are able to reflect on some of these issues that have been presented here as we go along in terms of looking at the solutions. Over to you, Dr. Tahani, to just maybe appreciate all of us and, of course, dismiss us. Thank you so much again.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid to talk because last time I talked, it was the fire. So I hope that I can say my couple of words safely and then leave. I'd like to thank you all for being here, for caring about Africa sanitation. Your presence here at 9 o'clock in the morning means that you care, and this is very much appreciated from our side as AMCOW. I want to quote Her Excellency, sanitation is dignity, yes. And in order to make it happen and to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 6, we are very far behind. And this is why we need to double our efforts. But we cannot do this alone. We need support. We need technical support, we need capacity building, we need a lot from our governments, from the development partners, and from the organizations that are concerned in this matter. So please, let's join hands together and move forward for the dignity of Africa. And I'd like to thank AMCOW Secretariat. I'd like to thank Mr. Nelson for the great coordination of the event, of the session. Comfort, the presentation was perfect. Emmanuel taking very good photos of everybody. And of course, for you and our development partners being here, the experiences shared from Tanzania, from Malawi, from Ghana, and from where else?
Yes.
Tanzania, Nigeria. Thank you very much. We need to learn from each other and to move forward. Thank you and have a very nice day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I have just two announcements to make as we are to be dismissed from this place. Number one is that we have the Africa Sanitation Conference coming up in Namibia, in the west coast city of Swakopmund, next to Walvis Bay, the place that you have to be. If you have been here, definitely this is going to be the best place that you have ever been to. So we are inviting you to make a plan. And look out for more information that we are sharing very soon on our website as well. That's number one. Number two, the next session that is coming up in this same place here is about innovative financing mechanisms towards achieving SDG 6 in Africa. So you don't necessarily need to go out unless it's very, very important that you need a bit of a health break. But after that, later on this afternoon, in this same room as well, we are going to have a high-level ministerial session on water-wise Africa through innovations and shared experiences. This one will be coming up from 2 p.m. and it will also be in this place as well. And this is where we're going to hear our, no, I'm saying 2 p.m. Now we have to push by 30 minutes. So.
No, at 4.
Oh, at 4. Sorry. Okay, at 4. Okay. All right, okay. At 4 o'clock, I'm sorry about that. And it's also going to be here. So make it a point to just really attend these very interesting sessions as well. Otherwise, thank you so much again, TAG Chair, for driving us and guiding us. I don't know if you have maybe something else just to add as well on your side, yes.
I want to use my national hat now, not the AMCOW hat, to invite you all also in the Cairo Water Week, which will going to take place from the 29th of October. Please be here. The themes are very interesting, the Cairo as well. So I'd like also to invite you all. So go to Cairo and take a transit through Swakopmund and then go back home.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am sure we don't want to miss Egypt. We don't want to miss Cairo as well. And we don't want to miss all these wonderful places. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let's converge again in about 30 minutes, if you can, please. Thank you so much, and do have the best of the moment. Thank you so much again.